Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into, well, one of the most volatile and complex geopolitical situations on Earth.
It really is.
Imagine this: two nuclear-capable rivals standing at a strategic crossroads. Then you've got three global superpowers making their moves on a world stage that's already, frankly, on edge.
It's a high-stakes game, absolutely.
Yeah.
A delicate balance of power.
And we're here today to try and unpack every intricate layer of it for you, drawing exclusively from, the latest intelligence and analysis we could get our hands on. So why this particular deep dive right now? What makes it so urgent?
Well, the immediate context, the thing that brings it all into sharp focus, maybe even alarming focus, is that recent conflict back in April 2025.
Right, the alleged Iranian drone attack.
Exactly. An alleged Iranian drone attack targeting critical Israeli infrastructure. And this wasn't just a minor skirmish, was it?
No, not at all. The response was swift and significant. Israeli airstrikes hit Iranian facilities located in both Syria and Iraq.
And it didn't stop there. The kinetic attacks were just one part.
Yeah, the cyber dimension just exploded, didn't it?
It really did. We saw this dramatic escalation in cyberattacks from both sides.
Yeah.
Targeting absolutely critical things: energy grids, defense systems.
It really shows how multi-fronted modern conflict has become. It's not just boots on the ground anymore.
Not even close. And what's really illuminating, perhaps something people outside, the immediate policy circles don't fully grasp, is the sheer level of brinkmanship during that period.
Brinkmanship, how so?
Our sources point to this critical, almost instantaneous decision-making window, less than 15 minutes during one particular cyber incident.
15 minutes, wow.
Yeah, where automated defense systems on both sides were apparently close, really close, to triggering a full-scale conventional response.
That's terrifying, that hair-trigger tension.
It's deeply unsettling. It shows the razor's edge we're often operating on, Even without nuclear weapons actually being used, the risk, the constant, palpable risk of escalation was undeniable.
And this isn't just some regional spat, is it? The impacts go way beyond the Middle East.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking profound, broader geopolitical impacts. There's the very real potential for a regional arms race, think Saudi Arabia, maybe others, which could ripple across continents.
Then there's the energy markets.
Massive disruption potential there. Direct consequences for gas prices, utility bills, everything.
And what about non-proliferation efforts?
There's a huge challenge of them. All the international efforts painstakingly built over decades. This kind of conflict puts them under immense strain.
So it's no exaggeration to say global stability really hangs in the balance here.
Not at all. How these dynamics unfold really matters for the entire international order.
And that's exactly why understanding this is so critical right now. Our mission today is to cut through the noise, get past the rhetoric, and give you a comprehensive, unbiased understanding, grounded in the source material we've gathered, of what's truly at stake.
We'll need to unpack the layers, nuclear capabilities, superpower influence, the strategic chessboard dynamics.
Right. The primary players, obviously, Iran and Israel, the two nuclear-capable rivals.
But then the crucial global powers.
Yeah.
United States, Russia, China. Their actions, their interests, they profoundly shape the region. Sometimes openly, sometimes not so openly.
Okay, let's start connecting those dots. Where do we begin?
To really grasp the gravity, we have to start with the core issue.
Yeah.
The nuclear capabilities themselves, Iran and Israel. Let's start with Iran.
Okay, Iran. Their program has been under this intense international spotlight for, over 2 decades now?
At least. And as of 2025, look, there's still no confirmed nuclear weapon in their possession. That needs to be stated clearly. But the progress they've made is, frankly, breathtaking in its speed and sophistication. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency.
The UN watchdog.
Exactly. Their 2023-24 report indicated Iran has enriched uranium up to an astonishing 83.7% purity.
And weapons grade is usually pegged around 90%.
That's right. So it's not just a narrow gap anymore. And our sources really emphasize this, that proximity dramatically shortens the breakout time.
Explain breakout time again for us.
It's that critical window. The time needed to produce enough fissile material, the core stuff, for just one weapon.
And if that window shrinks?
It slams shut the options for the international community to respond effectively if Iran did decide to go for weaponization. What diplomatic levers, what strategic options are left when the timeline is that short?
That's the heart of the concern, isn't it?
Precisely. A shorter breakout time means traditional diplomacy, even preventative military options, become incredibly constrained, maybe impossible.
So if Tehran made the political call to dash for a weapon,
The time for international action, negotiation, coercion, whatever, would be measured in weeks, maybe even days. Not months.
and that urgency fuels the instability.
Directly. It creates this constant state of high alert. And it's not just about the purity level, remember. It's the scale and the resilience of their infrastructure.
The facilities themselves.
Yeah, Iran's invested heavily. Key facilities like Natanz, it's huge, underground, thousands of centrifuges, a major enrichment hub.
And Fordo.
Fordo's the one built deep inside a mountain. That gives it incredible protection against airstrikes. It signals a clear intent for a robust, survivable program.
And Iraq?
Iraq is linked to heavy water production. That opens up a potential alternative path to a weapon-producing plutonium, which is different from the uranium route.
So multiple paths, hardened sites.
These facilities are the formidable backbone of their program, their continued operation at these advanced levels. That's the source of profound international concern.
Okay, so they're getting closer to the material, but you need to deliver it, right? What about missiles?
And our sources show significant advances there too. Iran possesses sophisticated missile technology.
Like the Shahab 3.
The Shahab 3, yes. And the Khorramshahr missiles. These aren't basic rockets. They have impressive ranges, anywhere from 1,000 to over 2,000 kilometers.
That puts a lot of the region within reach.
Significant regional reach. Neighboring countries, even some further afield. It's a crucial part of their deterrent posture, projecting power, holding key targets at risk to deter attack.
Now, what about their doctrine? There's this fatwa from the supreme leader.
Ah yes, the fatwa. The Islamic religious decree claiming nuclear weapons are forbidden. Haram.
But how seriously is that taken internationally?
Well, there's considerable, almost universal skepticism. And you could argue that the ambiguity itself serves Iran's strategic goals rather well.
How so?
It lets them develop the capabilities, push the enrichment limits, refine missiles, all without openly declaring an intent to weaponize. They maintain plausible deniability while keeping everyone guessing.
It's a clever balancing act. Precarious, though.
Very. That contradiction, the fatwa versus the technical progress, is a central puzzle.
So how do experts reconcile that? Is the fatwa genuine or just strategic couple?
It's probably multi-layered. The fatwa acts as a political and religious shield. It gives them an internal narrative, an external talking point. But meanwhile, the technical work continues, creating that breakout option if the political landscape changes dramatically.
And we can't talk about this without mentioning the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal.
Absolutely not. The 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. That deal saw Iran agree to major limits, dismantling centrifuges, unprecedented inspections in return for sanctions relief.
But then came 2018.
A truly pivotal moment. The U.S. unilaterally pulled out under the Trump administration.
And the direct result?
Iran immediately started accelerating its enrichment activities, removing the very constraints the deal had imposed, pushing them much closer to the nuclear edge we see today.
And losing those comprehensive inspections must have been a huge blow.
Immense. That loss of transparency is critical, and it's compounded by these persistent worries about, alleged secret sites, undeclared stockpiles.
Yeah.
It makes complete verification incredibly hard for the IAEA.
A constant cat and mouse game.
Exactly. So that's Iran, rapidly advancing, officially unconfirmed program, shrouded in ambiguity.
Okay, let's flip the coin. If Iran uses ambiguity about its intentions, Israel uses ambiguity about its very existence as a nuclear power. How does that policy of total opacity fit in?
It's a crucial distinction, isn't it? Two very different approaches to deterrence, but maybe equally impactful.
Israel's policy goes way
Back to the 1960s, a doctrine of deterrence by opacity, or nuclear ambiguity. They just never confirm or deny possessing nuclear weapons.
And the strategic advantage of that.
It creates a powerful psychological deterrent. It avoids direct confrontation, avoids the intense international scrutiny and oversight a declared arsenal would bring. It lets them maintain this bomb-in-the-basement posture.
The possibility hangs in the air.
Creating uncertainty for any potential adversary. That's the goal.
And while it's undeclared, we do have estimates. Cyberattacks, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, their 2024 report put the range between 90 and maybe 400 warheads.
That's an incredibly wide range.
What does that signify? Why so wide?
It's a direct result of the ambiguity policy. External observers, even the best intelligence agencies, can only make educated guesses. It prevents adversaries from knowing the precise scale of the threat.
But even 90 is significant.
Oh, absolutely. Even at the low end, Israel would be a major nuclear power. That uncertainty is key to their deterrence doctrine. Everyone assumes they have it, it's factored into all strategic calculations, but the details remain obscure.
And delivery systems.
They have a robust triad, multiple independent ways to deliver. That ensures survivability, a credible retaliatory capability.
Like the Jericho missiles.
First, the Jericho the Third missiles. Truly formidable, range up to 6,500 kilometers. That's intercontinental reach. They could hit targets far beyond the Middle East.
Wow. Then the submarines.
The Dolphin-class submarines from Germany. They provide a critical second strike capability. If land-based systems were somehow taken out, they could still retaliate from the sea. Makes a first strike against them incredibly risky.
And aircraft.
And finally, aircraft bombs deliverable by their advanced fighter jets like the F-15s, F-16s.
And the core facility is believed to be Dimona, right, in the Negev desert.
Widely believed to be, yes.
Yeah.
Where fissile material is produced, though officially it's a research facility.
Let's talk Doctrine. The Begin Doctrine.
Named after former Prime Minister Menachem Begin. It emphasizes preemptive strikes against perceived existential threats.
Especially WMD development by adversaries.
Exactly. The classic example is the 1981 strike on Iraq's Osirak reactor.
So that doctrine means they're willing to act unilaterally and decisively if they feel threatened.
That's the implication, yes. It deeply influences their response posture.
And crucially, Israel isn't part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT.
Correct. Not a signatory. Which means they aren't subject to the same international inspections and safeguards as NPT members.
What are the implications of that for oversight, for trust in the region?
Well, it creates a perception of a double standard, doesn't it? Especially for nations in the NPT complying with its rules.
Israel argues it's necessary for deterrence in a hostile region.
That's their position. But the lack of NPT oversight means no formal, verifiable international check on their program. This lack of transparency, while maybe strategically useful for their deterrence, undermines the global non-proliferation regime.
It makes it harder for others in the region to trust the system, maybe encouraging them to pursue their own capabilities.
That's the risk. It's a key tension point in global nuclear diplomacy.
Okay, so summing up the comparison, Iran advancing rapidly, officially unconfirmed, ambiguous intent, operating within the complex JCPOA framework, or lack thereof. Israel undeclared but assumed arsenal, total opacity, outside the NPT.
The contrast is stark. Iran's approach seems like defensive deterrence, build capability overtly to deter attack and gain leverage.
While Israel relies on preemptive strike potential, enabled by ambiguity and readiness.
And this creates an incredibly dangerous feedback loop, doesn't it?
Explain that loop.
Each side's actions, Iran's enrichment, Israel's covert ops maybe, are seen as existential threats by the other. This fuels a continuous escalating cycle. Action, counteraction.
Any Iranian advance triggers Israeli adjustments, maybe threats or covert action.
Which then reinforces Iran's perceived need for stronger deterrence, maybe accelerating their program to keep spiraling.
And the lack of clear international frameworks exacerbates this.
Immensely. For Iran, the uncertainty around the JCPOA, is it alive, dead, zombie? For Israel, the lack of NPT oversight means no mechanism for verifiable trust building or transparent de-escalation.
This fundamental lack of trust and clear communication makes real de-escalation incredibly hard.
Profoundly challenging. And what's fascinating, or perhaps terrifying, is how these nuclear capabilities, declared or not, shape everything. Regional power dynamics, alliances, strategic calculations for all actors involved, even far beyond their borders.
It's not just about deterrence between the two.
Not at all. It influences trade routes, energy markets, alliances, even refugee flows.
Yeah.
The entire geopolitical landscape of the Middle East is shaped by this nuclear shadow.
Right, and this high-stakes game isn't just played by Iran and Israel. The board is crowded. Let's bring in the global superpowers, starting with the U.S.
The United States. Deeply entrenched strategic influence there. A long-term, historically significant alliance with Israel, going back decades.
Underscored by massive military aid.
About $3.8 billion per year. That's not just money. It signifies a deep strategic and security partnership, giving Israel access to cutting-edge tech and intelligence.
But U.S. policy towards Iran has been inconsistent.
Like a pendulum, really.
Yeah.
You had the withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018 under Trump, which directly led to Iran ramping up enrichment and heightened tensions.
And then under Biden?
Earnest attempts, but so far unsuccessful, to re-engage on the nuclear deal. It just shows how much U.S. domestic politics and presidential changes can drastically alter foreign policy and impact that delicate regional balance.
Beyond diplomacy and aid, there's the physical U.S. military presence.
Oh, it's significant. Extensive bases in key spots: Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Iraq. These aren't just symbolic. They project power, protect U.S. interests like energy flows, and offer rapid response capability.
And missile defense systems?
They actively deploy advanced systems like TAD and Patriot batteries across the Gulf. Direct protection for U.S. assets and allies, and a visible deterrent against missile threats. A clear signal of commitment.
And economically. Sanctions are the main tool against Iran.
A primary tool, yes. Relentless enforcement, including designating the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, as a foreign terrorist organization.
What's the impact of that designation?
Severe financial and travel restrictions. It aims to curb not just nuclear ambitions, but Iran's broader regional activities, like supporting proxy groups.
And the U.S. has been clear about red lines.
Very clear.
Yep.
Strong, explicit warnings to Iran against any nuclear breakout. Consistent reaffirmation of commitment to Israel's security. Signaling clear boundaries and potential consequences.
Okay, let's shift focus to Russia. Their strategy seems much more complex, almost contradictory at times.
It really is. On one hand, Russia has cultivated deepening ties with Iran. Strong military and nuclear cooperation, drone tech exports, joint military exercises, a burgeoning strategic partnership, especially given Russia's isolation from the West over Ukraine.
But at the same time,
They perform this incredibly delicate balancing act. They maintain vital deconfliction agreements with Israel, particularly over Syrian airspace.
meaning they coordinate military operations to avoid clashes.
Yes, even while Russia supports the Assad regime in Syria, which is deeply allied with Iran, and acts as a conduit for Iranian influence and weapons.
So Russia's trying to work with both sides. How fragile is that balance? What would make them choose?
That's the million-dollar question. The sources suggest Russia prioritizes its broader strategic goals. That balance is surprisingly resilient because Russia sees its Middle East role as crucial for maintaining its global power status and leveraging against the West.
So Middle East tensions actually benefit Russia strategically.
Often, yes. It diverts global attention and pressure from, say, Ukraine. It forces the US and Europe to engage with Moscow on multiple fronts. It keeps Russia relevant, an indispensable player you can't easily isolate.
And they warn against unilateral action against Iran.
Consistently, stark warnings against Israeli or US military strikes. It underscores their desire to maintain influence and prevent a major escalation they don't control, one that could harm their own interests.
And they use their nuclear ties with Iran as leverage.
Definitely. Their role in Iran's civilian nuclear program, like supplying fuel for the Bushehr power plant, gives them diplomatic leverage against Western pressure.
Sure.
It asserts their standing. It's an intricate, often cynical game.
Okay, superpower number 3. China. We're seeing a different approach here, increasingly influential.
Very different, yes. China is emerging as a real diplomatic power in the region. Look at them brokering the Iran-Saudi peace deal in 2023.
That was a major diplomatic coup.
Absolutely. It reshaped regional dynamics, showed China's ability to act as a neutral arbiter in long-standing conflicts.
And their engagement seems driven mainly by economics.
Primarily, China is the largest buyer of Iranian oil, often finding ways around sanctions. That's vital for Iran's economy and China's energy security. These economic ties are fundamental.
So their main goal is stability.
Stability for their investments, promoting de-escalation to protect their massive Belt and Road Initiative interests, which rely on stable trade routes through the region, and ensuring a stable energy market for their own economy.
And militarily.
They largely avoid taking overt military sides. Rhetorically, they support non-proliferation, but their approach is nuanced, primarily economic. They want a predictable environment for trade, not direct military entanglement. Soft power over hard power in this context.
So putting it all together, US, Russia, China, how do their interests interact?
They intersect, they diverge, sometimes they clash directly. It creates this incredibly dynamic, often unpredictable environment. Alliances shift, new partnerships emerge.
It sounds like a move towards a more multipolar region.
Absolutely. Traditional alliances like Cold War ones are being tested. New, often transactional partnerships are forming. It makes the chess game even more complex, multi-layered.
Each superpower pulling different strings.
Making calculated moves, trying to shape outcomes in a region where the stakes are incredibly high, not just for the Middle East, but for global stability and economic prosperity. It's a global strategic dance now.
Okay, let's drill down into how this plays out on the ground. Proxy dynamics, indirect engagement. That seems key.
It's a huge, often shadowy part of the picture.
What does that look like in practice?
Think about forces like Hezbollah in Lebanon, a powerful non-state actor, heavily armed and funded by Iran, with significant military capabilities.
Then there's cyber warfare.
Pervasive, insidious, can inflict immense damage on critical infrastructure without firing a shot. And attribution is often incredibly difficult.
And Syria.
Syria has been a major arena for this. Various regional and global powers backing different factions, effectively an extended proxy war involving Iran, Israel, Russia, the US, and others.
And the difficulty in attributing attacks, say a cyber attack, makes responding tricky.
Incredibly tricky. It often leads to these cycles of retaliation and escalation, but without direct state-on-state confrontation. Plausible deniability, right?
So proxy conflicts let powers exert influence, inflict damage, without risking a direct, high-stakes clash.
Exactly. It's a way to wage war without declaring it.
Yeah.
But those layers of deniability are getting thinner. Our sources suggest that during the 2025 conflict, that balance almost tipped over several times, requiring rapid, covert efforts to pull back from the brink.
Which brings us back to the nuclear tension itself, acting as a deterrence tool. How does that threat, even Israel's undeclared arsenal, shape conventional conflict?
This is where it gets really fundamental and, frankly, quite terrifying. The mere presence of nuclear weapons, or the clear capability to build them quickly, changes everything about conventional war calculus.
It prevents all-out war between nuclear-capable states.
It acts as an incredibly powerful deterrent. The implicit threat of nuclear retaliation creates this concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD.
Meaning a full-scale conventional war would likely escalate to nuclear use, destroying both sides.
That's the theory. It makes the cost of total war prohibitively high. Unthinkable, hopefully.
And we saw this play out in 2025. Despite the attacks, the brinkmanship.
Exactly. Drone attacks, airstrikes, cyber warfare tensions soared, but neither side crossed that nuclear threshold. It was a stark demonstration of how close you can get without escalating to nuclear use.
A delicate balance between effective deterrence and dangerous brinkmanship.
A constant, terrifying dance on the edge of the abyss. One misstep could be catastrophic.
And finally, on this strategic chessboard, let's compare the types of influence. China's economic approach versus the U.S. military approach.
A fundamental contrast. China uses trade, massive investment in the Belt and Road, buying Iranian oil, creating economic interdependence.
While the U.S. relies more on its military footprint.
Bases, billions in military aid, advanced missile defense systems, hard power projection, and security guarantees.
So, which is more effective in the long run? Economic pull or military might?
That's the big question, isn't it? For you, the listener, to consider. Both have merits, successes, drawbacks. Is it economic integration or military deterrence that ultimately shapes outcomes and stability?
There's probably no single answer.
Likely not. But what's undeniable is that regional instability, regardless of the influence game, has immediate global ripple effects.
Especially oil prices and trade routes.
Absolutely. Hits global inflation, consumer costs, supply chains worldwide. What happens there doesn't stay there. Local tensions impact everyone's daily life and the global economy.
Okay, this brings us to maybe the most critical part. The risks, the red lines, the potential escalation paths. Accidental escalation seems like a growing danger, especially with cyber.
It absolutely is. The sophistication of cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, energy grids, defense systems creates a significant, often unseen risk.
How could an accident happen?
Imagine automated defense systems responding to a perceived attack that was maybe misidentified or exaggerated.
Yeah.
Or signals just being misread in the heat of the moment, maybe due to deception, maybe human error.
Miscalculation in a high-tension environment.
Incredibly dangerous when information is incomplete, biased, or deliberately misleading. A single error, a rogue algorithm, could trigger unintended military action that spirals before anyone can stop it. The speed of cyber is a huge factor.
Less time for decision makers.
Far less time than in traditional warfare.
And then there's the specter of a regional arms race. What does that look like?
We're already seeing signs. Look at Saudi Arabia's reported interest in developing its own civilian nuclear power. Some analysts see a latent desire for weaponization potential there.
A direct response to Iran's progress.
It's often framed that way. A response to the perceived shift in regional power. This illustrates the potential domino effect. One nation pursues advanced capabilities, encouraging others to follow suit to balance power or ensure their own security.
Leading to a more unstable, dangerously armed Middle East.
Exactly. A race nobody really wants, amplifying the risk of nuclear conflict exponentially.
So, given these huge risks, what triggers global intervention? What are the real red lines beyond what we saw in 2025?
Well, the international community is monitoring closely. The UN, the IAEA, they played crucial, often quiet roles during the 2025 conflict, working behind the scenes on de-escalation.
And we saw specific reactions from the superpowers.
We did. The US sending reinforcements to CENTCOM bases. Russia warning against intervention. China calling for peace. That shows the existing framework.
But what would trigger more direct, comprehensive intervention?
Hypothetically, something far more overt, more definitive. Confirmed nuclear weapon acquisition by Iran, for example. Or, God forbid, the actual use of weapons of mass destruction by anyone.
So 2025 tested the limits of brinkmanship within existing protocols.
It really did. It showed how high tensions can get without crossing that ultimate red line. But it was also a sobering lesson in how close we came and the speed required for de-escalation. Thankfully, the line held.
Looking ahead then, what are the prospects? Any hope for a return to diplomacy, a new nuclear deal maybe?
There's always hope, especially when the risks become so undeniable, as they are now. The heightened danger could create new global pressure for talks, perhaps a new, more robust deal.
But there are challenges.
Significant ones. A major factor, often overlooked, is hardening public opinion in both Iran and Israel. Years of conflict, sanctions, threats, it entrenches populations, makes compromise much harder for leaders facing domestic pressure.
And the economic impact continues.
Constantly. The threat to oil prices, trade routes, it's a continuous drain, reminding everyone that instability there hits wallets everywhere, affecting global living standards. The situation remains incredibly fluid.
So let's try and wrap this up. Synthesizing the complexity. It's breathtaking. We've looked at the dual threats from two nuclear-capable rivals, their doctrines creating this dangerous feedback loop.
Then the intricate web of influence from three global superpowers, US, Russia, China, with conflicting interests, turning the region into a truly multipolar chessboard.
And throughout, the incredibly high stakes for regional and international stability.
Absolutely. But beyond the geopolitics, the doctrines, the deterrence calculus, we have to remember the human impact.
The consequences for ordinary people.
Exactly. These nuclear tensions, the sanctions, the cycles of conflict, they directly affect daily lives. Economic hardship from oil prices, constant security worries shaping every decision, every family's future. It's not an abstract game, it's a brutal reality for millions.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for everyone to consider long after this deep dive.
A provocative question.
Are we perhaps entering a new Cold War? This time centered squarely in the Middle East, with its own unique nuclear dynamics, its own superpower rivalries.
And if so, what does that mean for you listening now and for global stability as this delicate, dangerous balance continues to shift?
It's a question worth exploring further as the world watches and holds its breath. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into nuclear shadows, Iran, Israel, and the global chessboard.
Next time, we'll shift focus, but stay on critical modern conflict themes.
That's right. We'll explore the pervasive role of cyber warfare and the insidious spread of misinformation, how they shape perceptions and outcomes in today's world. You won't want to miss it.